to the second break in Art of ASEAN with two documentary film directors, one from Vietnam and another one from Indonesia. We proudly present you to Mr. Nguyen Trinh Tị, a documentary film director from Vietnam, and Mr. Tino Soren Kello, actor and director from Indonesia. So let's talk with them and learn more about film industry in both countries. Talking about film industry in Vietnam, it began around 1920. In the first era of Vietnamese films, there were silent documentary films. They produced documentaries on the funeral of Emperor Dai Hin and the enthronement of Bao Dai. There was also the silent feature. The first sound film was produced from 1937 to 1940. With the end of the First Indochina War and the creation of North Vietnam and South Vietnam, there were two Vietnamese film industries, the Hanoi industry focusing on propaganda films and Saigon producing mostly war theme of comedy films. Hanoi's Vietnam Film Studio was established in 1956 and the Hanoi Film School opened in 1959. The first feature film produced in the Democratic Republic of Vietnam was a nationalistic work directed by Nguyen Hong Nhi, Song Mot Dong Song, or Together on the Same River. There was even an animated feature Dang Doi Tang Cao, A Just Punishment of the Fox in 1960.
My mother used to work for a documentary film studio in Vietnam. So she had a long history with the documentaries, so I understand how it works. Up to about 15 years ago, the documentary films and all kind of films in Vietnam were made by the state-owned studios. So basically everything were under the control of the government. And then from about 10 years ago, the film system started to be open to more participants, like the private sector and different local TV stations. And also we started to have some independent filmmakers that work in documentaries as well as feature films.
The shift to a market economy in 1986 dealt the blow of Vietnamese filmmaking, which struggled to compete with video and television. The number of films produced in Vietnam has dropped sharply since 1987.
The independent filmmaking is still very, very young in Vietnam. So about 5 years ago, when I came back from America, where I lived for 10 years, I started to find that we need to build a community of independent filmmakers in Vietnam. So I started to organize workshops, and about 3 years ago, we got the funding from the Goethe Institute to start a film center. So this film center is specialized in documentary films and video art, because I really think that documentary films today, in our modern time, need to be defined in much broader terms to include, artistic films, experimental films, video art, and the more kind of academic films. So many kind of non-fiction films can be included under this umbrella of documentary.
With the cooperation between Goethe Institute Hanoi and Hanoi Doc Lab, Documentary Filmmaking and Video Art Center, they brought documentary films from many countries around the world for the Vietnamese to see and to learn different international perspectives.
Until recently, we didn't really have any special audience for documentaries, because everyone only get the kind of documentaries that they can see on TV. So that is the only kind of documentaries that they understand as exist. So only since we started this center, we start to do screening every week, and we translate many films from around the world into Vietnamese with subtitles, so the local people can come and see it. So they started to see many different kinds of documentaries. So now their perception of documentaries are very broad. Now they understand that documentaries are much more than what they can see from television. So now, with the documentaries can be a mixture of fiction and non-fiction, of something that can be very creative, very personal, very subjective. It doesn't always have to be the informative kind of documentary or propaganda documentaries or documentaries about the wildlife or touristic kind of documentaries.
This response proved that there are enthusiasm among filmmakers, particularly young filmmakers, to produce documentary. Previously, the lack of enthusiasm toward documentary was pushed by the fact that documentary doesn't have economic value comparing to fiction, feature film. As documentary suffer from interview complex in terms of business, many documentary filmmakers are still lack of access to the production capital. In Indonesia, most of the documentary productions are independent. Documentary filmmakers produce film in light budget, even their own money.
Indonesia nowadays, more people are start to get interested in the making documentary documentary film. Maybe they got bored with feature film, but also because of this digital revolution, everybody can have a camera now. I can have a camera, you can have a camera, she can have a camera, he can have a camera. And with the editing facility on a laptop, you can make a film out of it. So, based on experience watching other people film, there are many young people who's now thinking, why not make my own film? That is how now it's becoming more and more people going into the documentary film. But the problem is always when and where to show your product, if you call it a product, or your film. That is still an issue, I think, all over the world, because documentary film is still not considered as commercial. At the same time, to make a film, even the cheapest way, you use a small camera, you use a laptop to edit, it's still spend money. And then you want to shoot to go somewhere, it's still transportation. So you need your money back. And that will be still an issue, I think, for quite a long time. Unless you are very rich and you spend your money.
Harus disembayangkan.
Audience now are more aware of documentary pushed by new phenomenon of popularization of documentary in the West. Documentary film like The Corporation, March of the Penguins, Fahrenheit 9/11, and any other films makes positive impact on society that now they are really aware of the genre.
Now, with the growth of the filmmakers itself, in making documentary, the audience is also growing. First, of course, let's just go to human thing. I make my film, and then I introduce my film to my family. And if the film is good, the documentary film is good, then my family will tell the friends, their friends, and it keeps growing like that. The same with the film documentary festival. I go there, I tell my friend, so the audience's interest is also growing in Indonesia.
History of Indonesian documentary film is closely related to Indonesian history. History of colonialism, despite claim that the first documentary was brought by Christian missionaries in Nusantara, The history of documentary films in Indonesia tends to start with the Dutch colonial era, when documentary films were screened at the night bazaars in Jakarta. To make a documentary film, filmmakers should have to secure permits, submit the screenplay for scrutiny, approve the title with the government, and report the names of all crews.
You can make a footage of something moving and have a sound, or let's say the audio-visual footage. You can also chop those footage and melt it together in a laptop. But whenever you make something or you shoot something, think also that you are actually making a film. And making a film is not just a row of footage, but there should be, you have to start also to think about how to present those footage. You need storytelling. And that is one element that is lacking in many of these young filmmakers, maybe because they don't go to film school. But again, I don't see that as an excuse. You know why? Because, for instance, I go to a market and I saw something happen. I come home and I tell what I saw. It doesn't need me to be a novelist to tell the story about what I saw in the market. So the same thing with making this film. As long as you have you use your logic, how to pass on your information to other people, and keep thinking is what you want to pass on. And storytelling normally will help in passing on that information.
And those are the ideas of directors, one from Vietnam and another one from Indonesia, which have different level of development in documentary film industry. And for the next break, we are going to see the string orchestra class at Yes Academy to see those kids paying their full attention to Real Performance Day. Stay tuned.